Good evening, Chesterfield County. Welcome to our latest in a series of town hall events focused on Project Restart as we prepare to re-enter students to in-person instruction. My name is Tim Bullis, and I lead the Communications and Community Engagement team for Chesterfield County Public Schools, and we're excited that you've taken time tonight to join us in this discussion. Our efforts tonight will be to inform and to also answer questions that we have received, and we appreciate everybody who has already submitted questions. I have this device right here in front of me. We'll be monitoring on social media to pick up additional questions at all as well, but we have already received several hundred submissions online, so we feel very confident that we will be here until 8 o'clock at least tonight answering these questions. Just a brief overview of where we're going to go tonight and who we have with us. We have to my left, at the far left, Dr. John Murray, who is the Director of Middle School Leadership. We have next to him Dr. Belinda Merriman, who's our Director of High School Leadership. Next to Dr. Merriman is Dr. Sharon Pope, who's our Chief Academic Officer. To my right in the empty seat, we'll pretend that he's here. He will be joining us shortly, is Josh Davis, our Chief Operations Officer. He's actually in another meeting and will be joining us shortly. And then finally tonight, Nick Euler, who's our Coordinator of Student Health Services for Chesterfield County Public Schools. Again, our work here tonight is to go through the presentation that was provided to the school board last Tuesday, to answer questions that have been submitted by families throughout Chesterfield County and by staff as well, and to make sure that parents feel prepared to make a decision about how to return to learn, whether it be in person through the hybrid model, to continue virtual until you feel a little more comfortable about returning to school, or even to go to CCPS Online, whose registration is open through this Friday. So with that, let's get started. Again, we're going to start tonight with the Project Restart update that was provided to the school board on last Tuesday. We'll start with the acknowledgements as we do with every presentation, and the very first bullet is the most important one. We do believe that face-to-face instruction is best for all students under normal circumstances, given that students miss much more than academics when not in school. There's been a lot of discussion over the past several months about the mental health and well-being of our community as well, and so we realize that students get a lot more than reading, writing, and arithmetic in our schools when they're with us. And we want to do everything that we can to provide a safe, supportive, and nurturing learning environment in which to bring them back to school. As we have started to bring students back over the past several weeks, again, our goal remains to return to face-to-face instruction for all students when it is safe and as quickly as possible. We have been following the Virginia Department of Health data, and our Public Health Committee has been meeting bi-weekly to this point to make recommendations for the school board as we move forward. That Public Health Committee is made up of public health experts and medical experts. They have a wide range of talents and abilities, and we've greatly appreciated their support over the past several weeks. Again, this has been a months-long endeavor. While schools stopped for in-person instruction in mid-March, our academic team and our instructional leadership team immediately began preparing for this current school year. We launched with a virtual learning environment and have transitioned into a hybrid model at the elementary school so far. I think our virtual performance has been much better than it was in the spring, and parents have acknowledged that by expressing some hesitation about whether or not it's time to actually go back in person. So we're glad that we have that choice for families moving forward. In this presentation that was presented last Tuesday, there were three main points that we talked about. We reviewed the Public Health Committee report, we looked at the phased reentry of students, and then we talked about transportation. And Mr. Davis will expand a little bit about transportation as we go further into the meeting tonight. The Public Health Committee's report started off with a look at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's core indicators. We have been asking for weeks and months for somebody in the medical field. We're trained educators. We've been asking for somebody in the medical field to provide us with guidelines and guidance for a safe return to instruction. And so the school board several months ago requested that. The superintendent started a public health panel, which we referenced earlier. That public health panel came up with its own metrics and decided very recently to go ahead and transition to the metrics proposed by the CDC and the Virginia Department of Health. I think it's important to note, and I'm sure Mr. Euler will later on as well, that the metrics are largely aligned with one another. We have not moved the goalposts on our metrics. Rather, the state has moved their goalposts closer to ours. So when you look at the core indicators, there are three that the CDC and the Virginia Department of Health recommend. They are the total cases per 100,000 over the last 14 days, a positivity rate over the last 14 days, and a school division's ability to implement 5 mitigation strategies. You see them there on the screen: masks, distancing, hand and respiratory hygiene, cleaning, and contact tracing. You will note here that in the case for total cases, the one difference between the CCPS indicators and the CDC and Virginia Department of Health indicators is they have used whole numbers. We used rolling averages. So that is the one difference that we see here. You see the 5 different color grids that were adopted by CDC and Virginia Department of Health that we have migrated to as well. With this slide, you see what happens with each of those color grids and what the recommendations are. And I know that there's been a lot of interest in the yellow and what that recommendation is, and Mr. Euler will help us out with that shortly. The current Chesterfield data, and again, this was as presented last Tuesday, so that data was pulled the Monday before. If you look at the total cases per 100,000, we were in the orange, higher risk transmission in schools. When you look at the positivity rate, we were in the moderate risk, yellow. And if you look at the ability to implement 5 mitigation strategies, we determined that that was in the lower risk for the transmission in schools. For school readiness, those 5 mitigation strategies you see in 10 of the categories we marked as a yes for the ability to implement correctly and or consistently. We did mark no for the ability to implement consistently for social distancing. That's a tip of the hat to the fact that in our school hallways and in some other parts of the school that it is a little different, more difficult than others to do a 6 feet spacing standard. When you looked at the overall score based on that, we came in at a 3. And that's as far left in the yellow category as you can get. So at that point, with that in mind, the Public Health Committee went on to the secondary level indicators, and you note that this slide has a date of October 28th. These are the secondary indicators the day after the school board meeting. And you see that there are 3 greens and 1 yellow. So again, with that tilt on the very far left edge of yellow, they went to the secondary indicators to make their decision and recommendation to the board last week. Just for comparison purposes, you see what that secondary indicator list looks like as of today. And I'll flip back real quick. You look at the 28th, there were 3 greens and 1 yellow. As of today, there are 2 greens and 2 yellows. So this is an indicator that we continue to monitor weekly, even if the Public Health Committee is no longer meeting as frequently. But our coordinator of student health services is continually monitoring this, reported to the school board today. We'll continue to do so on Monday. And we'll continue to track this and make recommendations moving forward based on that. The recommendations based on the data you see here, all of the school board meetings that have occurred, with the exception of last week's, again, because this is last week's presentation, you do see an uptick in the numbers and you do see an uptick in the positivity rate. The positivity rate, though, is still below where it was when we decided to return cohort number 1 to school. So that played into the recommendation that the Public Health Committee made as well. Some other considerations that were taken into account by the Public Health Committee: since September 29th, the school division has returned approximately 7,000 staff members and approximately 13,000 elementary students and students who were in cohort number 1. Those would be some of our select special education students. During that time, and again, this report is as of last week, there have been 27 reported positive cases among staff and students while in school. And while not the same previously referenced positivity rate, that equals to 0.1% of our in-person population that has contracted the virus while they've been in school. We ran those numbers again today, and while our numbers of reported positive cases are higher, they're at 58, that still leaves us well below 1% of our in-person population that has contracted the virus. That is not to say that that is not an important concern. We are definitely concerned every time a child or a staff member contracts the virus, and we have shown in the situations where those have occurred that we have taken immediate action to remove that person from the learning environment and also to do the appropriate contact tracing and to quarantine as necessary. Other considerations that were shared at the board meeting last week is that the number of known cases for possible community transmission or spread in schools was about 2. The vast majority of the incidences that we've worked through with the Virginia Department of Health showed that individuals with the virus contracted it outside of the school setting and had not spread it within the school setting. So again, the reported percent of positivity for Chesterfield County, while increasing, remained below at this time last Tuesday what it was when cohort number 1 was approved to return to school. So therefore, last Tuesday, the Health Committee recommended that we return cohort number 4, which is our middle school and high school students, to in-person learning. The majority of the committee agreed with that recommendation and said that the rise in data was not sufficient to pause the return of cohort number 4, especially when you considered the secondary indicator of hospitalizations into the equation. And again, per the Chesterfield County Health Department, we have seen improvements in testing capacity and contact tracing resources in place. We've seen that within our own school division. We were able to make notifications very much within a 24-hour period if somebody needs to be in quarantine or in isolation. And so when we looked at the phased-in reentry cohorts, obviously we already had cohorts numbers 1 through 3 in place. Cohort number 4, which would include all 3 of those cohorts, and cohort number 4 brings in students in grades 6 through 12. Again, they will start on November 9th, and they will follow a hybrid schedule. Again, students with the last names A through K will go on Mondays and Tuesdays, and students with the last names L through Z will go on Thursday and Friday. The Wednesday in between is our time to do some individual remediation with small groups or with individuals of students, and we'll do that while our wonderful custodial team is busy cleaning the school buildings as we transition in between the first group of students and the second group of students. Again, the projected timeline that was shared last Tuesday as the recommendation was being delivered, and then the learning options, and our families should have gotten an email over the weekend that continued to work on explaining this with a little more detail. There are 3 options. One is CCPS Online, and registration, again, is available through this Friday. That is a self-paced, self-directed opportunity. Students are assigned a teacher, but they're largely progressing on their own at their own pace. Hybrid learning environment, which is where students attend the 2 days per week on an even and odd schedule and then have 3 asynchronous days of learning. Those students will join synchronously at the beginning of each class period and will remain with the class for a long duration, almost kind of like what they are right now in the virtual learning environment. And we'll get into those questions shortly with our instructional team. The third option is a virtual asynchronous, where our students remain at school with opportunities to join the class virtually as they are right now. And again, we're going to go a little deeper into this with some questions as we get out of this presentation here shortly. Transportation, for those who have not been in schools yet, our cohort number 4 routes are available through eLink. There is a link on our front page of our website, mychesterfieldschools.com, and that's how we're doing bus routes this year. We're no longer going to put bus routes out there in the public domain. We feel like it's a safety concern, and so we've personalized the approach. If you know your child's student ID number and your child's birthday number, you can get in, find out what bus number, what bus route, the bus stop, and the time that the child would be picked up at the bus stop and dropped off at the school, and then conversely, the same information will be available in the afternoon. Again, some changes for our Career and Technical Center students who actually returned with cohort number 3. And I guess I would add right here, everything that we've seen in this building, we're in one of our Career and Technical Centers right now, as well as the other building on courthouses that our high school students who have returned and the middle school students who have returned to this building have done so almost seamlessly. The transition has been wonderful, and we say the same thing for our elementary school students as well. As we look at cohort number 4 and beyond for transportation, we know that staffing continues to be a challenge for transportation departments across the country. Bus drivers are in short demand and high need. And so we are continuing to recruit and train new bus drivers. We'll give Mr. Davis an opportunity later to give a public service announcement for an opportunity to come work for Team Chesterfield. But in the meantime, while we're continuing to work to staff up, we'll have planned double backs that will be common as we cover unfilled packages. And though inconvenient, they will provide a degree of consistency and certainty. And I would suggest even those have gone very well through cohorts 1 through 3, and we expect that they will through cohort number 4 as well. Those routes will be analyzed and adjusted once ridership has been stabilized. Again, we'll get into the logistics of that, but we're unable at this point to accommodate more than 26 students on a bus while keeping that social distancing guidelines in place. But we'll be working throughout the course of the next several days and weeks to make sure that those routes are adjusted and balanced as necessary. And again, the last slide that was presented to the school board at their last meeting was a look at what's next. So obviously, we've scheduled for cohort number 4 to return to hybrid in-person instruction on November 9th. Our school board has asked us to continue to monitor, and the board will continue to monitor our Project Restart metrics. This presentation has not been amended, so it does say that the Public Health Committee will continue to meet biweekly. The school board has asked that the Student Health Services team, in conjunction with the Superintendent's Office and instructional leadership, continue to monitor those changing data sets for within Chesterfield County, and the school board will return to a meeting monthly and will make decisions as necessary there. If there's an emergency change that needs to be made, that would be made by the superintendent in consultation with the Chesterfield Health District. Again, that is not to say that if there's a case in school, we will shut down the entire school. As folks who have been following us have seen, we have had a very limited number of cases in our elementary schools upon return. It goes without saying that our schools are a reflection of our community, and that this virus, if in the community, it will be in our schools. And so it's incumbent upon us to react as we move forward. And so we will isolate as possible and as needed, and if in the event that it becomes a transmission issue, at that point we would look at closing an entire school down. And so again, our goal is to return all students to face-to-face instruction as quickly and as safely as possible. And through this effort, we've actually provided parents and students choices on how they would care to proceed. And so with that, that was the presentation that was delivered to the school board last Tuesday, with the addition of the one slide that showed the metrics, the secondary indicators as of today. We'll go ahead and jump into some of the questions that have been proposed and posed to the school division. But before we get to our instructional questions, I'm going to go ahead and start off with Mr. Euler. And I should note, as I look around those sitting beside me, they are wearing masks. They're appropriately social distanced. We do want to model exactly what we're going to be doing in our schools. And so they will remove their masks in order to answer the questions. They are 6 feet apart, so they are socially distanced as appropriate. But we did want to point out that we intend to model what we have expectations for our students and staff in schools as well. So Mr. Euler, obviously there's been some conversation since last week about the metrics and the concern that maybe the Public Health Committee didn't follow the recommendations of the Virginia Department of Health. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, thank you. And I appreciate this question, and I can understand the concern. I too have seen the headlines and the reporting that CCPS has gone against the Virginia Department of Health's guidance. And I'd like you to keep in mind, as we discussed, that the Virginia Department of Health is on the committee and has agreed with every recommendation that we have proposed. Now, in particular, when we get into the metrics, the CDC and VDH metrics that we've been using specifically give you core indicators. And based on those core indicators, you can come up with an overall score. They also give you secondary indicators, which is just more data to look at. And in particular, those secondary indicators are useful when there's a difficult or close decision. So last week, the majority of the committee looked at the core indicators and saw a score of 3, which was just over the threshold of a moderate risk category. And the majority of the committee looked at the secondary indicators, and by looking at all of the data and a totality of the data, decided that the best recommendation was to continue forward and introduce Cohort 4 to a hybrid model. Now, it's possible to disagree about the interpretation of the data, but to say that we've disregarded the metric or the VDH recommendations isn't accurate. I would say instead that we've utilized the metric based on core indicators and secondary indicators the way that it was designed to be used.
Sometimes these mics are a little easier to operate than you would think, and sometimes they want to take a little bit longer. Thank you, Mr. Euler. Before we get into some of the questions, I did want to provide an overview of where you can find this information. The presentation that we just went over is available on mychesterfieldschools.com, as is a bevy of other information. If you click on the Project Restart page in the middle of the landing page on our homepage, you will be taken to this presentation, every other presentation that we've given to the school board on this matter, as well as the weekly and or more frequently than that updates. Again, we've heard from some people that we're communicating too much. We've heard from others that we're not communicating enough. It remains our goal to communicate just enough, and probably more so than enough, to make sure that everybody feels like they have the information that is necessary. But if you miss something, that information is available on our website. There was also already a question on social media chatter, and we'll be bouncing back and forth between the social media feed and the questions that were pre-submitted about the number of cases. On that landing page, again, clicking on Project Restart on mychesterfieldschools.com, you will, at the very top button on that landing page, takes you to a case count in each individual school. We are reporting each case that is reported as cohorts return. So if there has been a case reported to the Virginia Department of Health or to the school division, at the elementary school level, you will find it located on there. As we reintroduce cohort number 4, we will begin to post the student positive cases that come back with those as well. So it's our effort to be as transparent as possible to let folks know how we're doing and where the virus has shown up at this point. There was also several comments about outbreaks and how certain outbreaks are doing. I do want to be a little cautious with the term outbreak, because the term outbreak infers that it is a very widespread disease and that there are lots of people who are suffering from it. And while that is the case in Chesterfield and Virginia and throughout the country and internationally, the term outbreak is used by the Virginia Department of Health to define 2 or more cases that are connected within one building. And so the cases, if you go onto that site, and you will see, we've not had any more than 2 or 3 cases connected. So it is not a widespread outbreak, but that is the definition that the Virginia Department of Health has chosen to use. Again, that information is all on mychesterfieldschools.com, clicking on the Project Restart button. So with that, let's start getting into some of the questions that we've gotten so far, and we'll start off with our instructional folks. I'm not sure if Dr. Murray or Dr. Merriman would like to go first. But the question, and I'll modify it a little bit to include both groups, will 6th graders and 9th graders get an orientation to their school prior to other grades coming back? Will there be any effort made on the first day of school to help them navigate a new school?
Thank you, Tim. And that's an awesome way to start, because the reality is even our returning students need onboarding exercises. As when they left us in March, we were under a very different set of norms and school protocols and procedures. And so it's very important for our building leaders, and they've been busy planning and preparing with these orientation activities in mind, that we consider our 7th and 8th and 10th through 12th graders who are returning to us. But it's also not lost on us that our 6th and 9th and any new student that might be transferring in also have opportunity to orient themselves with our campus layout and participate in some other necessary orientation activities. And those have been planned and will take place over the first several days of school.
I will say, just to add, at the high school level, everything Dr. Murray said is absolutely true, but one of the things that I know he and I have talked about throughout our time together, and the high school principals I know, and as well the middle school principals, we want to make sure our students have a sense of belonging, because it's not just which room do you go to, it's which teachers are you able to interact with, where do you go, who is going to be your friend group, what clubs are you able to do. So they really are working to find those ways. Additionally, I know at the high school level, and I'm assuming at many ways at the middle school level additionally, they're creating a lot of videos that are being sent out. So if you're getting those video clips, please make sure you sit down and watch those with your students. I know that the schools are taking a lot of time to build step-by-step directions so your students can walk in feeling as safe and secure as they're able to on that first day. Additionally, some of the schools are doing some orientation time during their classes on Thursday and Friday. So while it's virtual, they're going to help walk them through what that first day will be like, because we want these students' first days to be the best first day they could have.
Thank you. We'll switch sides and go back to Mr. Euler. We have Anne Marie from the Clover Hill District who's wondering about attendance protocol and when should students, multiple questions about attendance. We'll start here. Let's start with the self-assessment that we've asked our students to undergo before they even leave home in the morning. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We've asked our students and staff members actually to complete a self-assessment of their health prior to getting on the bus or prior to coming to the school building. And this gives us the assurance that students aren't experiencing any symptoms that may be concerning, and that they don't have a fever, and also that they haven't had close contact with anyone who does have COVID-19 or anyone suspected of having COVID-19. So by completing the self-assessment every day, our students and our staff members are letting us know that they're free of those symptoms that may be concerning prior to coming to the school building. And that way, when they do get to the school building, we understand that things arise during the day, and we have protocols in place to be able to isolate students as needed as their parents come to pick them up if those symptoms develop at school. But our goal is for students not to report to school with those symptoms.
Thank you. And I'm going to clarify a comment that Eileen just asked on our Facebook feed. We have sent out those student assessment forms via email. They're also, again, available by mychesterfieldschools.com. Click on the Project Restart button. The question was asked, do the forms need to be returned? No. The forms do not need to be signed or returned to the school. It's simply an assessment that we ask that your student undergo each day prior to leaving. Dr. Murray, Dr. Merriman, if a student has one of those symptoms and is scheduled to be in person that day in the hybrid model, Can they join online?
So who's picking this one up?
Absolutely. Students who attend, whether in person or virtually, will be marked present for that day. And candidly, this is our opportunity to emphasize the importance of staying home if unwell or exhibiting any symptom.
Thank you. So you just tackled the last part of the question too. If they're marked absent, are they marked absent when they're attending virtually? We have one that's specific to one of our high schools, and it's about, don't forget that only 2 absences a month result in chronic absenteeism. How are we going to be tackling the attendance issue and making sure that our students are getting the instruction that they need?
As Dr. Murray just alluded to, if a student is unable to come into school because they're ill or because they are quarantined, our goal is to make sure that we're continuing on in instruction. So if they log in, the teacher during that time, that first 20, 30 minutes will be taking attendance. They'll be helping set the stage. They'll be going over some content. They'll be marking those students present, because our goal is to make sure that our students are here and learning every single day. So that is not considered chronic absenteeism. Our major fear is that we don't want students to not log in. We don't want them to miss that synchronous or asynchronous time, so we really want to make sure that they're checking in with their classes daily, whether they're at home or whether they're at school.
Thank you. Dr. Pope, Brenda from the Matoaca District asked the question that the vast majority of our parents are asking. Why can't these students return to school full-time? If they can play sports and go everywhere else in our community, why can't they go back to school? Why can't they all go back to school at once? I'm assuming it has something to do with the social distancing guidance and the capacities that we have in classrooms, and then I'll go to Mr. Davis for the buses. So we're going to tee it up. Schools, buses, and then Mr. Euler, the obvious question that follows there is, when will we be able to return to 5 days a week? So Dr. Pope, let's start with you.
All right, so great question. Why can't our students go back? And probably if we stay here long enough this evening, we will also get the question, why should our students go back? So we know we have families everywhere on that spectrum, but for us it's pretty simple. We are ethically bound as a public entity to follow the CDC and the VDH guidance. And that guidance, as you already alluded to, Mr. Bullis, does have restrictions on us. Our buildings were built pre-COVID, and we have 63,000 students. And there is just no way to actually meet our social distancing, as you mentioned, and those other restrictions that we're very clearly and pleased to be following per the health panel's evaluation. We just can't do that with the space limitations that we have. So that's the biggest issue that we face. Of course, we want all of our students back, but we want all of our students healthy as well.
Mr. Davis, what does capacity look like on a school bus?
So we have enjoyed a nice start with cohorts 1 through 3. It's been really exciting. Our buses have performed well, and they're really, those drivers are ready to take on cohort 4. The reality is 26 passengers is our maximum on a school bus. We can't wait for the day to fill those buses back up again, but until we are unable to have more than one child in a seat, it limits our capacity to the point where we would spend till noon taking all the kids to school if we tried to bring everybody in. And then, as Dr. Pope mentioned, we simply don't have the room for them to be safe and socially distanced. So looking forward to that day. I know we're going to get there, and we're going to do the best we can with the social distancing guidelines that are in place with the capacity that we're allowed.
Thank you. Just for clarification purposes, Mr. Davis, can you just briefly share with the community what ridership on a typical middle school or high school bus would look like in terms of numbers? You mentioned that we're at a capacity of 26. How many do we usually carry?
Certainly. We try to fill the buses up. So that capacity for the larger middle and high school students would be 52. And occasionally we get a few more than that when we have a few small ones that can sit together 3 to a seat, but that's really not desirable. So that capacity is 52. We can actually plan for more when we know that ridership will be low, where there's a lot of folks that are driving themselves to school. We can, actually take a pool of 100 students and see, that parents are taking some are driving to school, and we can pick up all those children during the regular times, you might say, successfully. So again, we're planning for smaller loads, but the normal loads are between 40 and 52.
And so are we asking parents to do anything to assist us with transportation this year?
We would like to ask parents to continue to assist at these levels. Our elementary parents have really come through I'm sure they're forming some great carpools. We have seen good success. The loads of 26 or less that are desired have certainly taken place at the elementary level, and with the help of our parents, we will see loads that are lower. When we talk about those bus loads, we're planning for 52, so let's think about that, dividing them in half. We're down to 26. If a portion of them are going virtual, we should be pretty safe and be able to transport these students to school. Again, it was mentioned there will be some double backs, and I'll talk about that perhaps in a little more detail later.
Great, thank you. Mr. Euler, 5 days a week, full-time, is that in the cards for the next couple of days, weeks, months, years? What are we looking for?
Well, I think that's everybody's goal, and I think I can speak for everybody in saying that. Mr. Davis and Dr. Pope laid out some of the concerns that are there from a mitigation standpoint, and I can share that CDC and VDH recommend that data also be looked at, and obviously data plays a role in terms of how much the virus is spreading in the community. So as we get to those lower data risk levels, CDC and VDH recommend that we start looking at more days in school. The challenge becomes that CDC and VDH also recommend that we keep in mind these mitigation strategies that we've talked about, in particular being able to socially distance and mask and clean and contact trace. And as has already been said, the difficulty really becomes the spacing and looking for a time when we can continue to invite more students back to the school building at the same time and still meet the spacing requirements as they are from the Department of Health and CDC.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, want to go back to you real quick. The question or the conversation ongoing right now on our social media is, how is transportation equitable if we're asking some people to take and others to ride? I assume by asking those who are able to take, we are actually making it equitable for those who aren't by providing transportation in that manner.
Yeah, indeed. And if you really need to ride the bus, please ride the bus. Again, we've seen the seats available at the elementary level, and I'm confident they'll be there at the middle and the high school level for those who need the transportation. So equity remains one of our core principles, and again, students that need a bus ride, we will do our best to give you a bus ride.
Thank you. I'm going to start heading back over to here, and we're going to start talking a little bit about what the school day looks like, whether they're in a hybrid model or in a virtual model. I did want to clarify, because again, we're monitoring the social media chatter as well. There's some folks out there who are interested in seeing the 6 feet social distancing being applied in our secondary schools. Several people have said it's not going to happen. I think what we've seen so far in our school visits is at the elementary level, where we have 5-year-olds doing it successfully, that it has been done and has been proven to be able to be done. How are we going to begin to educate the students who may not have been practicing that prior to coming back to school on the importance of 6 feet social distancing, wearing your masks? What are some things that can be done in the next week, and what are some things we're going to be doing when students return?
I think right now, as we've started already, our teachers will be working with their students over the next few days when they have them in classes to help reiterate what the expectations and needs are going to be once students come back to school, because we do want to make sure our students and our staff are safe every day that they're in our buildings. So I think that that's one key thing. It certainly always helps, and we always enjoy the partnership when our families are at home reiterating those needs and reiterating that to their own children. So if they're leaving the house, remembering the mask, reminding them to take a mask. We will have extras in the building, so if a student does forget a mask, we will certainly make sure there are some on the buses. There'll also be some in the buildings for that reason, just to make sure of that piece. I know as we're doing the building layouts, and the principals have been working to make sure classrooms are set up, they are looking at individual class numbers, how many students have agreed to come in versus how many students are staying virtual. They're looking at those exact numbers of who will be here Monday, Tuesday versus Thursday, Friday, to make sure that they have enough seats. They can still maintain as close as possible to that 6 feet. I'll be honest, I think all of us recognize in a high school hallway, it's a little bit more difficult to maintain that 6 feet. So what we're really doing is we're making sure that we have, if it's feasible, one-way hallways. They're going to be really working with students on what transition looks like. They've increased transition time, so that way students have additional time to get to their other classes rather than feeling rushed, so feeling like they have to be up against someone else to get to their classroom in time. So they really are, the schools are working very closely with their staff. They'll be working very closely with their students over the next few days. And then once the students are in the building, they will consistently be reiterating those desires and expectations.
These are harder to use than the viewers might think. And just to add on to what my colleague, Dr. Merriman, just mentioned, all of those same practices are being applied at the middle school level. And what you'll see is a lot of similarity at the secondary level because our sizes are so similar. And so one-directional hallways to the extent possible, as well as one-directional stairwells, so that we're limiting that cross pattern of traffic as best we can to mitigate our social proximity in our hallways.
Mr. Euler, I'm going to come back to you real quick because there is that concern about hallways specifically. It's been referenced on the chat right here. What is the guidance that the Virginia Department of Health and/or the CDC has provided for what is identified as a close contact, somebody who is going to be put in a position where they're going to have to quarantine if they've been exposed to the virus?
So the definition of a close contact has been updated a little bit over the past few weeks. You may have heard the rule of 6 feet for 15 minutes. And this has been updated to include anybody who is within 6 feet, so less than 6 feet, for 15 total minutes over a 24-hour period of someone who is diagnosed with COVID-19. So we use this same definition as we start to notify individuals in the school buildings that they may have been exposed. We're looking for individuals that may have been within 6 feet for 15 total minutes to an individual that was diagnosed with COVID-19.
And so somebody who passes somebody in the hallway is not going to fall into that category because they have not met the medical professional's definition of somebody who would be a close contact.
That is correct. That brief contact in the hallway by itself would not define anybody as a close contact.
Okay. Dr. Merriman, Dr. Murray, we have a question that's come in about what are we going to be doing in the hallways to make sure that there's not congregation. You know, our kids love to talk. They love to be with each other. They haven't in some cases for 7 or 8 months. What are we going to be doing to make sure that that doesn't happen in the hallways?
And I think we probably both have examples of this. One such example is we will not be assigning lockers to our students at the secondary level, which is probably our main element of encouraging congregation, at least at the middle school level. And then our transitions will be much more deliberate in that regard because we will be heading out one class, one direction to our next class. So that will minimize our congregation time.
I also know additionally for most high school students, I'm assuming for most middle school students, when they get off the bus, that's also a time when we would tend to have larger congregations. So those students are being directed to go straight into their classroom. So that way they'll start their day, they'll already be socially distant within the classroom. So we understand that we need to find ways though that perhaps they could do some interaction but still be that 6 feet apart, which should be done within a classroom, doing some lunch individual desks or tables so that way students can still be 6 feet apart at a lunchroom even, so that way they're not congregating, being careful of our lunch lines and making sure that we have monitoring going on there. You know, I really do think that one of the key things we need to keep in mind is that this is not just the administration checking up on this, it's not just the teachers checking up on this. We really need our students, and especially at the middle school and high school levels, to continually almost self-police and think, am I getting too close? Do I need to step back? And be comfortable to be able to admit that and move that distance away. So we really will be working with them on both their self-advocacy, so they could perhaps say it to someone else, and their own thoughts on, or like taking care of themselves in addition to having staff helping them make those good decisions.
Thank you. We'll stay with you two for right now and then jump to Dr. Pope. The next series of questions are actually tagged to the Midlothian and Dale districts, but I'm assuming parents and families in all 5 magisterial districts would like to have more information about what exactly the hybrid model will look like when it's in person, and what services will those children get in the hybrid model when they're not in school. And then we'll jump to the virtual model after that. So let's talk about hybrid in person and what the students will get when they're not in person on their off days.
Well, I'll start because I have the mic on, if that's fair. During those hybrid days, those students who are in the building will, of course, be going to their classroom. They will be there with their teacher. The teacher will be giving them direct instruction. The teacher will be answering individual questions and helping them on their short-term assignments and long-term projects. Those students who are at home will also be logging in during the first part of that class period to have a similar experience. So they will also be hearing some direct instruction. They would possibly be hearing those long-term assignments. They'd be hearing the direction sets of what will be going on during this week, what reminders you need to have. So that will be going on, so that way, and then once that student on the Monday, Tuesday is home Thursday, Friday, they'll be doing that virtual check-in through the Google Meet or through Canvas, and then the students who were at home will be then in the classroom having that more personalized interaction with their teacher.
And what I would add on to that, Dr. Merriman, is that once our virtual students log off and are working independently at home or wherever remotely, our in-person students will have access to their teacher who will be able to provide enrichment opportunities, remediation opportunities, and work in a more tailored one-on-one environment that fully virtual doesn't yet allow.
Dr. Murray, keep going on that if you would, because we've gotten some questions by email over the weekend. That one statement seemed to attract a lot of attention, the extra stuff, so to speak, that a student in person would get. That's happening right now in classrooms, right? That individualized remediation, enrichment opportunity, our teachers are differentiating based on need. It's not something that our virtual learners won't get. It's just
Correct.
something that they'll get when they come back.
And I'm glad that you kick that back my way. And I think Wednesdays are probably our best example of where we will gap fill for our virtual learners, where our teachers will have those days free of outside of their advisory period check-in, that direct or synchronous instruction. Rather, they will be able to work with students who they've identified as needing more one-on-one instruction. And probably the biggest clientele there will be those opting to remain fully virtual.
Thank you. Dr. Merriman, for those who aren't comfortable yet sending their children back to in-person instruction, there is a virtual option. What does that look like at the secondary level?
At the secondary level, if you're choosing not to send your student back in person yet and also not choosing to go to CCPS online, then what you'd be doing is you would be doing that login at the beginning of every class period. Please be aware that the daily schedule will shift slightly when we're in person. So starting November 9th, the daily schedule for each of our schools will look a little different than what it did when everyone was virtual. But they will be logging in for the first part of those class periods in order to gain that direct instruction that I spoke of, to hear those longer-term projects, to get that conversation that perhaps might be going on within the classroom. And they'd be doing that on the Monday, Tuesday, and then again on the Thursday, Friday. So rather than alternating coming in and out, they would just be doing the entire time outside in their own home as they're going through their instruction.
So it looks a lot, sounds like what virtual looks like right now.
Yeah, it's very similar to what virtual looks like now. And the key thing, though, that we do want to make sure people understand is that right now, after that synchronous time, our teachers have that ability right then and there to do that one-on-one instruction, whereas at that point in time in the building, they'll be working with students who are in the building, and that's where that time would be done on a Wednesday instead, or would be done after school or at other times as needed.
Okay, I'm going to bounce to Dr. Pope for CCPS Online in just 1 second, but I'm going to stay with you two real quick because the questions come up here as we've been watching right now. Can a student switch? Can they jump in, jump out, depending on how they feel about the situation at that moment?
We have asked if someone chooses to remain virtual, that they remain virtual till the end of that first semester, so the end of the second 9 weeks. And the reason why is that we are basing our classroom spacing upon that. So we currently are rearranging classrooms if a class is too large, moving a smaller class into the smaller classroom so that way we can maintain that social distancing. We recognize there will be some flex, so if a student does decide to come back and then suddenly has to quarantine, of course we want them to remain virtual while they're on quarantine or when they have to remain homesick. So, but if you're remaining virtual for the entire time, that's like your decision. We would hope that you do that till the end of this semester, so that way we can help make sure that our classroom structures and systems are in place.
Thank you. Dr. Pope, the third option that our families have to choose from if they're not comfortable coming to school and know they're not going to be comfortable coming to school for the rest of the year, because we've seen this virus is very fluid, changes more often than we'd like. CCPS Online, can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and I think exactly what you said there. The rate of change that we've all experienced, we know that different families, different students have different tolerance levels, and for some of our families, they already know that they want a final model that they can accept now and stay in through June. And they want to make that decision, and they're committed beyond the semester to the end of the year. And then that option that we would like them to consider is CCPS Online. And it is a consideration, and it's very personal for each family, and we recognize that. And that's why in the messaging that went out this weekend, we clearly said that there are some steps that we would ask any family to do as they consider CCPS Online. And that first step is to reach out to your home school and speak with your counselor. It's important to realize that we've ended the first quarter and that our students across the county are at different places in their learning. So we want all of our families to understand that the CCPS Online model very much exemplifies the motto that we often say here in our school district, that it models any time, any place, any path, any pace learning. It is the most flexible instructional model that we offer, and it is probably the most independent-centered model for a learner. So in evaluating as a parent my student's work tendencies, and speaking with the counselor at the school to see which courses are available through CCPS Online, the decision would be made after some thought, but not too much thought, because our last on-road opportunity for CCPS Online is actually happening this week. Enrollment began today, and enrollment will stay open through this Friday at 5 p.m. So that means a conversation has to take place this week, considering the courses available, if this is the right path for my student. Again, understanding that it is highly flexible. The teachers in CCPS Online are specifically trained to deliver this instructional model in a very customized, personalized way for each student. And if that decision is made, then there is an enrollment process where the student would actually enroll in CCPS Online for the remainder of the year. Now, the reason we say that the last on-ramp opportunity for this option is this week is because we feel it is very fair to families that are ready to make the decision, and to our staff. Our teachers need to know where they're going to be for the rest of the year, and whether that's affiliated with a homeschool, teaching virtually or in a hybrid model versus CCPS Online. We do have to shift staff with these decisions. Staff follows students, and it's fair to the staff members that we settle them in for the rest of the year if they're going to choose to be with CCPS Online. And we only know how many staff members we need after we know how many students are going to choose this third option. So it's important that we get those hard numbers from our families by the end of this week, and then we are committed to have all the staffing in place and to transition the student for the remainder of the year no later than December 1st. We would hope that we could do it much quicker, but there is that staffing shift that we have to work through on our end. But that is our commitment to our students, and the students who elect to go this route, they would remain in the virtual model with their home school until that CCPS staff is assigned and reaches out to welcome the student to that model for the rest of the year.
Great, thank you. Mr. Davis, we're going to come to you in just a minute. You don't have to turn your mic on. We're going to get to you on Wednesdays. I want to go back and we've got a couple of clarification questions that have come up. Dr. Murray, you talked about the fact that we won't be doing lockers this year. We've had a couple of parents ask if their children will be allowed to carry backpacks this year instead. I know that's been a school-by-school decision. Where are we with that this year?
Well, that's a great question, because at the middle school level, we have done a great job of discontinuing backpacks and using our lockers for the last several years. And in fact, backpacks are back, and that is going to be the main way that we're able to avoid the use of lockers.
Okay, so for those in the audience who have been asking, backpacks are good. Recorded lessons was the next one that popped up. Parents saw that they would not be continued in the communication this weekend and are asking why, that they were very helpful for some students. What was the thought process behind that?
Well, once we are already asking teachers to toggle between in-person and virtual instruction, to lesson record just is not possible to capture everything in the room that we would need it to provide a good enough product on the back end. And I'm sure Dr. Merriman has some other reasons that we've discussed, or is that sufficient?
I think also we sometimes do lack the technology because each of our teachers have one laptop. And so if they're utilizing that laptop to both run the lesson, they're using it to monitor the students in the classroom and monitor the students at home, that does make it difficult to have a recording that is, that would give enough depth or content that would be worthwhile for the student to watch. And we do not want to start putting forth videos that the student would take time to watch that they wouldn't get what they needed. We'd much rather have them come into class, tune in during that synchronous time, and then do other work, the longer term projects, the other work that the teacher's assigning versus rewatching that video.
So we're at about the halfway point, and so for those who joined us a little bit late and missed some of the, what does the piece of, if you're not in school on Monday and Tuesday, but you're at home on Monday and Tuesday, what are the students on Monday and Tuesday getting that they wouldn't need, if they, assuming they join that classroom, and we're encouraging them to join the classroom virtually. It's not a 5-minute check-in. We're encouraging them to be on longer and get the full instruction.
And that's precisely right, and another reason to support discontinuing the lesson recordings at that time, because we want all of our virtual learners, as well as all of our in-person learners, to be together during that set session of live instruction.
Just as a caveat also, I do want families to understand that that range is going to be flexible depending upon the lesson and the day. So there might be some times where the teacher's saying, hi, I want you online for 35, 40 minutes because I really have this rich conversation I want to have with both the students in the classroom and the students at home. And then there might be some other days where the teacher's going to do a shorter check-in, maybe a 10-minute check-in with those who are at home because they have a lab set up. So I was a biology chemistry teacher, so maybe I have a lab set up. I need to do that with those people in the building, and I would not be able to do that with enough time. And so I think we need to understand that the teachers are going to be driving that based upon what the student needs are and what the lesson is.
So the conversation online is moving to Wednesdays. Let's review again what instruction looks like on Wednesdays and then what we're going to be doing in buildings on Wednesdays while the students are not there. So what does a student get on Wednesday? What's the expectation at home?
We are asking that every student log in during their, what we view as an advisory time. Different schools call it different things. So I have a student at Monacan, so he goes to Monacan morning. I know at Meadowbrook it might be called Pride Time or Monarch morning. And realistically, that's a time where they come together in an advisory type where they might be doing particular school-based lessons. It might be some of that orientation work that Dr. Murray and I spoke about, where we want to make sure that our students are building connections not just with perhaps a teacher, but with other peers. It might be some time that we're taking to help them understand some longer-term career planning, college readiness work, just depending upon what's going on throughout that year. So there will be some very clear lessons that are going on, not graded, but just some times for kids to dig into that. That is where we will be taking attendance with our students, because we do want to make sure that we're able to mark them present on those Wednesdays. Additionally, during that time, students should be taking time to do the longer-term projects and the other work assigned, and teachers will be creating some smaller groups or doing some one-on-ones with students and also some parent conferences to make sure that we're really increasing that communication so that way everyone in the family is aware of how a student's doing at any point in time.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, while the students are not in school, what are we going to be doing on Wednesdays in between the two student groups?
Thank you, Mr. Bullis. One of the big focuses, of course, will be to keep the buildings clean. They're very clean right now. I have two groups of employees I'd like to chat about. We have our CCPS employees. We have a building operations supervisor and day porters whom are at these schools every day conducting cleaning operations. On Wednesday, they'll have the opportunity to be more thorough because we won't have the traffic and the students in the building. So they'll be able to go around, hit those high-touch surfaces and so forth even more thoroughly. The second group of employees, is our contracted custodians that work in the afternoon and early evening to clean every classroom. So they too will have that opportunity on Wednesday evening to do a second cleaning almost. After the Tuesday night one, then Wednesday they'll be back again to be even more thorough as they hit up all their classrooms, ensure not only things like trash is emptied, but that the floors have been thoroughly cleaned and mopped and the desks are wiped down, and gives them the opportunity to use some equipment and cleaning techniques that they wouldn't normally have on Monday and Tuesday, and then again on Thursday and Friday.
Sure. If you keep your mic on. we'll come back to you. Questions being asked about PPE that we're providing to staff. What types of PPE have we ordered, and have we had distributed to schools that will help protect our staff?
Yeah, that's another very good question, and another point that the building operations supervisor will be actively taking inventory every Wednesday of the PPE needs and ordering back, whether it's through a contractor that delivers directly or from our warehouse. So our PPE falls into some different categories. The consumable things, such as hand sanitizer. We've placed hand sanitizer stations throughout our buildings. We know that that's a consumable item. It'll be watched every day. And again, Wednesdays will be an opportunity to ensure that those things are clearly refilled. Other consumable products, such as the standard soap in the bathrooms, we need to stay on top of that each and every day. PPE items that are used by our staff, important. They probably have their own mask, but we have adult masks that are available for staff. We have face shields, and that's a very important aspect for our faculty that will work primarily in the front of our classroom. The classroom should be marked with what's called the teacher safety zone, which basically, if they stay behind that piece of tape, they'll be at least 6 feet away from our students. But realistically, we know that teachers need to be closer to students often through the day, so they will engage that face shield at that time. Other PPE that's going to be used when necessary for certain situations are gloves, gowns, and especially in our clinics and special needs classrooms where there might be bodily fluid events. So again, equipment such as that is readily available. We've ordered a lot of it, we've distributed a lot of it, and we're going to learn how much it'll be burned. We are also providing some cleaning supplies which are consumable. Each classroom will have spray bottles with both disinfecting and sanitizing material. They also have wipes that are both disinfecting and sanitizing. This is material that's available to the teachers, and the wipes in the case are actually going to be available to students. So those are some of the pieces of equipment. Did I leave anything out important that we normally talk about, Tim?
I think you've got it. I think we're there.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm going to switch back to my left, and I'm going to go a little rapid fire real quick because we've got some questions that are bouncing in. They were not previously submitted, so we're going to see how well you can respond quickly. First one is, will teachers change? Will my child's teacher change once I come back to in-person instruction?
The intent at the secondary level, and I think I can speak for my colleague, Dr. Merriman, on this as well, is that teachers won't change with great exception, and those exceptions would be the teacher does not or is unable to return. In that case, obviously, we would need to make a schedule shift. Or the other exception to this would be if staffing shifts to CCPS online, as Dr. Pope pointed out. But those would be very niche changes. We don't see widespread schedule changes needing to occur at the secondary level.
Great. And again, just to prove that we are monitoring the traffic real time, we appreciate and agree with Karen Henderson, who just said we all agree that teachers are heroes. You're correct. We do agree with that. Dr. Pope, connectivity issues. Somebody was asking about the time that they're learning from home. Can you briefly talk about what we've done to support students who need technology at home, from giving Chromebooks to every student to the devices that we've given that will help them connect to the internet?
Sure, you're great at answering some of the question too as you hand it to us, Mr. Bullis. But as you mentioned, giving devices, ensuring our families have devices, soliciting all the time to ensure that your child's device is working. And then secondly, of course, we've had some great internet deals that we've worked with families and providers in their local area to ensure that families are enrolled and that we're supporting that financially for the family. And then the third thing that we've done, of course, with our technology department is provide those hotspots. And sometimes, you know, we found there, especially in the beginning, when the loads were heavy and families were trying to juggle their home devices and their current provider, that hotspot was needed as just a little boost.
Great, thank you. Folks are asking if we're really serious that classrooms won't be overcrowded. What's going to be the typical class size when students are in there on Monday and Tuesday, and then what's going to be the number on Thursday and Friday? Again, averages, we can't hold you to specifics because each classroom's different, but average.
I would say on average we'll have probably between 12 to 15 on Monday, Tuesday, and about the same on Thursday, Friday. Please do, I hope everyone at home is really honors the fact that our principals and our administrative teams and our school counselors have been taking a tremendous amount of time since we knew we might be moving towards the hybrid model, to look at that basic alphabet split. So as soon as we knew that, we started trying to work and balance those class loads. And then additionally, as students have started notifying them whether or not they'd be virtual or not, really looking at how many students are in that class across the entire week, and is that classroom space the appropriate classroom space for them, or should they move that classroom to another area? Because I do know for some of our buildings, they might be using the forum to make sure that students have ample space. But they really are working very hard to make sure that that is done, and done in a really consistent manner, so that way education can continue for students.
Great. Mr. Davis, questions coming up about some of the PPE and whether or not students need to bring their own wipes to clean their own desks. We're providing that, I assume.
We're providing the wipes. Each classroom has what I call a bucket, and I'm sure we're going to go through a few buckets. We would like students to bring their own mask. We could actually provide them a mask, too. They might forget it one day. I've done that. Glad I had an extra one at my desk. So same thing for our students. We'll take care of them.
Staying with you, though, the students, if they would like to bring their own hand sanitizer, can do so.
Please, I want them to feel free that they can bring their own hand sanitizer. We're going to have those stations. The teachers may have some small bottles in the rooms, but if a parent is comfortable with them bringing their own, they're free to do so.
Okay. Dr. Merriman, dual enrollment pops up every once in a while on this chat, and in the questions that were pre-submitted. Can you talk about what the questions have? The question has been about attendance for dual enrollment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I want to first
Actually,
of all,
sorry. Can you go ahead and define what dual enrollment
Yes.
may be for those who don't actually know? I should
yeah,
start there.
we're really fortunate that we're able to offer our students the ability to gain high school credit and college credit at the same time taking the same class. So that really is a win for so many of our students. So they're able to graduate from high school. Some of our students will be graduating this year with a full associate's degree of college credit. So, it truly is a tremendous program. And we recognize that dual enrollment can be a pain point, especially right now. And the reason why I'm saying it could be a pain point is because we have to follow John Tyler's rules and regs in addition to CCPS's rules and regs, because as I shared, they're getting that college credit. And so for many of the families, we've been saying that we don't think we'll be able to offer dual enrollment in our buildings if you choose to stay virtual, because we have to honor a certain amount of instructional time. And we recognized, as I said, that was a pain point. So we've been really fortunate that we've been working with John Tyler and with our school board to find some ways to increase that flexibility. I did speak to the high school principals and high school counseling coordinators today, so they're aware that we're looking at multiple ways that students could remain in a virtual setting and still maintain their dual enrollment courses that they already have scheduled for second semester. So don't worry, we're working on it. The exact coursework isn't necessarily finalized, so I don't want to open up a door to, I'm saying something wrong here, but we are certainly working on that. We realize it's a need, and we're doing our best to honor that need.
The statement's been made, or the question's been asked by several folks on the chat about how are we going to deal with overcrowded schools. And I think it's probably important for us to acknowledge that overcrowded schools get the same number of teachers per group of students, period. So it's not like we have students that are, an overcrowded school does not have 50 students in a classroom per se. It has 50 more students in the next classroom. Is that right? Can you talk a little bit about staffing? And when we talk about having 12 students in a classroom.
Yeah, no, when we start getting staffing and start working with the high school and middle school principals in the spring, and this is also true for elementary, we really base staffing based upon the number of students that are projected and then the number of students that arrive. So when we're saying 12 students in a classroom, we're saying on that hybrid day, it's not 12 students every day. It's 12 students on that Monday, Tuesday, and then a second set of 12 students on that Thursday, Friday for a total of 24. I honestly, looking at our numbers of students who are saying they're going to be returning, I do not envision any issues with overcrowding right now based upon some students choosing CCPS online, some students choosing to remain virtual, and some students coming in, and then that alphabet split. I really think between those options, we really will not have any issues with overcrowding, but we certainly do have staffing availability for that.
And I think it's fair to acknowledge that at the elementary level, not that you can compare the two age groups, but at the elementary level, it's really close to a 50-50 split in terms of who's come in for in-person instruction and who's remained at home for virtual. And you might see maybe not a 50-50 split, but you would expect to see some similarities since there are families with multiple kids in different levels. So, Mr. Euler, I don't want to leave you out of this discussion. The questions come up about quarantining. You did a great job earlier talking about close contacts. If a person tests positive, how long are they out? And if they're not testing positive, but they've been exposed and are quarantining, how long are they out?
That's a great question, and I like to start these discussions with kind of a definition of a couple terms that we use a lot, and that's quarantine and isolation. So an individual who's diagnosed with COVID-19 would be isolated. That isolation generally lasts 10 days. There are other things that the health department will inform the individual about that they're looking for at the end of that isolation. For example, they'd be fever-free before they return, and they'd also see their symptoms resolve before they return. But generally, a person who's diagnosed with COVID-19 would stay out for 10 days from the diagnosis, and that's in isolation. Quarantine, on the other hand, is for individuals who may have had close contact with someone who's diagnosed with COVID-19. And I do like to point out that by definition, quarantine means that that individual is otherwise healthy and does not actively have COVID-19. So for anybody who is a close contact of somebody with COVID-19, they'd be asked to quarantine for 14 days from their last close contact with that individual.
Our instructional leadership, lunch. What's going to happen with lunch and breakfast in our middle schools and high schools?
Very strategic coffee.
And I apologize if you haven't eaten dinner yet because we're online.
So your first question, Tim, was about lunch. And we were very excited that our local risk management agreed to allow us conditional use of our cafeteria space. That has eased a significant burden off of our teachers' plates. And while some facilities may not allow an everyday use by every class of the cafeteria, at least as we anticipate a full 50% return on each day, and certainly we'll be working to adapt as we know our true numbers. At least at the middle school, and I'll let my colleagues speak to high school, we are committed to having students in our cafeteria eating socially distanced, 6 feet apart, at least every other day, and most of our schools have been able to figure a way that that lunch can occur in the cafeteria every day for their students. Some of our other schools have had to identify secondary locations where essentially it becomes a makeshift cafeteria space where our students will eat lunch. Belinda, did you want to talk?
Yeah, and I think you also mentioned breakfast, and I do want to make sure every family knows that we do offer the breakfast and lunch options for the grab and go, and they're going to be able to come off a bus, get their breakfast, and go into a classroom to eat, or sit at that cafeteria space to eat, depending upon the school. And then at the high school level, our goal is to get to every single kid eating in the cafeteria every time. We are still figuring out numbers, as we talked about already. In our classrooms, we're more secure in our numbers than lunches because we can't have, you have to run lunches within a certain period of time. I don't think any parent wants their student eating lunch at 8:30. And so therefore, we are working on making sure every kid eats in the cafeteria. It's our goal. I can't promise it's going to be there the first day as we're still figuring out our numbers and figuring out the best flow for that.
And I think we should go ahead and point out right here, we don't get to say this very often, but thanks to the federal government, again, we don't get to say that very often, but thanks to the federal government, they have provided free lunch and free breakfast, and in some schools, free snack and free dinner to every student. So for our families who are sending their children to in-person learning in the hybrid model, it does not matter if your child qualifies for the federal free or reduced lunch program. Your child can be fed for free. If they forget lunch that day, there's lunch there waiting for them. If they'd rather have lunch at school, that's an option as well. So that's an exciting development for our community as well. Mr. Davis, Julia was just asking and made a statement that teachers should not be expected to clean their bathrooms in their classrooms or their classrooms. And I believe we landed that students can help with some of the wiping down of desks. Certainly that we're not laying that all on teachers, right? We, as you mentioned earlier, and maybe for those late joining us, you talk about the cleaning process that we'll go through on a daily basis.
Yes, students are allowed to use our wipes. They are safe. The only exception might be a child with a skin condition in their hands, or if somebody develops one, but that low probability is very, very low from using the wipes. But we know they're very safe products. teachers concerned about a bathroom in their classroom, so that would most likely be at the elementary level. I think we've already been experiencing this, and you know, we have in-house staff that supports that. I can understand where there might be a quote-unquote emergency where a teacher might have to step in and provide some of that support, but you know, the folks, the day porters, are going to get there as quickly as possible if there's a type of an emergency or a spill that really needs immediate attention. But they will be cleaning those bathrooms on a routine basis. And, you know, this is different. This is different. You know, one of the things I said back in the summer is, you know, cleaning's everyone's job. It's our job at home. And we all have, it's a new environment for us, and we're all having to be really extra careful. And I use that pink spray bottle every day at work on the microwave. I use it in the conference room. So, you know, we're all going to pitch in and do what's necessary. It's not necessarily in our job description. I don't want any non-custodial employee to feel that that's all they're doing or that's become a huge part of their job. You know, that's time for a discussion if someone's feeling overburdened. But we want to provide the resources. If everybody pitches in, we'll stay clean and stay safe.
And I believe in the overall Project Restart document that we posted online several months ago, we actually identified the cleaning agents that we're going to be using for those parents who wanted to go look and see what the active ingredients were, that type of thing. We want to be an open book on that and be transparent.
Yeah, indeed, that material's still provided. And I'll just add that any manufacturer that puts out a safety data sheet is going to have a caveat that there might be you know, somebody might react to it, but generally, these products are very, very safe for the vast majority of our population.
Great. Let's stay with you, Mr. Davis. This parent's gone back to transportation and asked if the schools are prepared for the long lines in the morning for student drop-off, and are schools prepared to excuse students for being late? Talk about some of the logistical pieces that we're working with to include the police department and our school security officers to assist with transportation in the morning.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bullis, and I'll let the instructional staff talk about the you know, the possible lateness, because it can happen. Again, we're seeing with the population of students first divided in half into the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday cohorts, and then a percentage of those remaining virtual, that some of the traffic conditions that we had expected had not materialized as badly. Realizing middle schools, high schools, more students, more vehicles, we're leaning forward. We've got a partnership with the police department. We know where our problem areas are from previous years. And will there be a few rough bumps possibly at some schools the first few days? Probably so. And I'll go on and talk about the buses. But, you know, I would ask, we try not to judge the performance of any of us in the first couple of days in September, and so some of those things are going to occur here on November 9th through the 12th, but it's going to smooth out, and I'm confident that our building leaders have thought through their logistics. They know how to get students in and out of their buildings. They know where they've had bottlenecks in the past, and again, we've talked to our safety and security office. We've got some more folks on the street. The elementary level, I've been so impressed by the staff that's been out there on the sidewalks, meeting our students, both at the school bus line and at the parent drop-off line. And this is going to be a big team effort, and we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to handle things efficiently. And I'll just, you know, toss it over to the other side of the room in case somebody does happen to show up late for, whether it's a late bus or a late parent that got hung up in some traffic.
Yeah, and I'll be concise about this. It is not our practice to mark students tardy or absent if the fault of their tardiness is on CCPS. So if it's due to a late bus, then they'll be marked present as they would if they were there on time. If it's due to a long, winding parent drop-off, which we hope we've effectively thought through at this point so that it will not be the case, then again, our principals would inform teaching staff to not mark those students tardy or absent or anything but present.
Great. I want to do a time check. We have about 15 minutes left in tonight's session. We've reached almost 13,000 residents, families at this point, parents, so we hope we've begun to make sure that everybody is informed about the return to learn next Monday. There's only been 1,076 comments at this point on our Facebook feed, so people are actively engaged, obviously. Just a couple of points of clarification for our families. You see this time something new in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We do want to make sure that our hearing impaired audience has the ability to follow us along, so we are thankful to the interpreters who have joined us tonight, who have made that opportunity available to our families. And for our families who are Spanish-speaking, who may not have understood everything that we have said along the way tonight, this will be translated and dubbed into closed caption Spanish within the next couple of days, and we'll post that online as well. And the last bit, before we head into the last 15 minutes, is the fact that this presentation will be re-shown and re-aired. It actually will be saved onto Facebook and on YouTube, and will be available for anybody to go back and look at parts that they missed, or look at parts they want to see again, or if you know of folks who just flat out missed it for whatever reason, please feel free to direct them back to this piece right now. So let's quickly recap. And I know you folks have already hit on this, but for those who weren't here at 6:30, who weren't with us an hour ago, let's talk about what the in-person hybrid looks like and the virtual looks like. What will students see when they're in person on Monday and Tuesday? And when the students who are at home on Monday and Tuesday, what will they get out of instruction?
Yeah, thanks for that, because I think that's probably one of the most important questions that parents are asking. And I think it's difficult because it's so unknown, and sometimes the unknown is daunting, and we want to make sure families are comfortable with what's going to be happening next week. And so students who have the last name with the alphabet of A through K will be coming in on Monday and Tuesday. They'll be following their schedule. Once again, as I've said previously, but just to reiterate, that daily schedule in terms of the time a bell might ring or a class period would start will shift slightly from what it had been virtually, and that's because we have to have a change of transition times to make sure that the desks are cleaned and students can navigate our one-way hallways. And so those students would be coming into their classes, they'd be settling in, they'd be using their Chromebooks, and then those students who are at home, who at the end of the alphabet or chose to remain virtual the entire time, will be logging in around that time also. The teacher will log in, and they'll get to start the class period together as a group. They're going to be going over perhaps some direct content, some key topics. They might be discussing longer range planning for the class. If you're an AP teacher, maybe you're hitting on what an advanced placement test might be looking at. So that's what will be going on those days. And then on Thursday, Friday, if you're a hybrid student, those students with last names L through Z will be in the building, well, the beginning of the alphabet, sitting at home, doing that same thing, logging in at the beginning of the class period, getting that, that virtual instruction, that synchronous instruction with their peers. If a student chooses to remain virtual the entire time and does not choose to come back in the buildings and does not choose to go to CCPS online, then they will be just logging in during that beginning part of that class period, hearing that direct instruction, hearing what's been going on, get that piece, and then they would be logging off and then continuing on doing the work on their own, whether that be an assignment, a long-term project, a study guide, reading a novel, depending upon the class. And then on Wednesdays, our staff will be doing our advisory periods with our students, so that way every student will be logging in during their advisory time. That'll be a time for lessons, but lessons not necessarily related to academic content, but perhaps related to social emotional learning, perhaps related college and career readiness. So that'll be going on during those times. And then additionally, on Wednesdays, both students who are at home, hybrid, or staying asynchronous the entire time will have time to interact with their teachers in a one-on-one or small group time.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Euler, to recap, what are we going to be looking at? And I assume we're going to continue to monitor the data as we move forward.
Certainly, we'll continue to monitor data moving forward, and I'll continue to update the school board and Dr. Daugherty as needed on where the data stands. So to recap a little bit, we talked about that transition that we all hope for in the future of more in-person learning in terms of 5-day-a-week. And we recognize that that requires a continued monitoring of data, and it also requires the ability to still implement all of these mitigation strategies that we've talked about, from distancing to the best practice of 6 feet, to continuing to wear masks, continuing our cleaning protocols, partnering with the Department of Health in terms of contact tracing. So as we look forward, those are all things that we're monitoring, data, as well as our ability as a school division to implement the mitigation strategies.
Thank you. Dr. Pope, question has popped up several times about will we have SOLs? I don't know that those are ours to control, and exams, and I think we're still looking at that, and we'll have some updates maybe the next couple of weeks as to how we're going to proceed.
Absolutely. So let me tackle the SOL piece, and then I'll hand over to the level directors for the exams, because they know the extent that we've been communicating about that. So obviously, the VDOE has already made the decision that this year schools will carry the same label that they carried last year, which is accreditation waived. So that takes a little pressure off our teachers and our students, because they don't have to come back and immediately face the pressure of what did we miss last spring and what do we need to cover this year, because we've got to hit accreditation, and we know in the past that that has been a primary driver of concern for our teachers and our school leaders, and it's nice not to have that concern this year. That does not mean, though, that although that label is guaranteed by the VDOE of accreditation waived for every school across the Commonwealth this year, it does not mean that our students will not be taking SOL tests. We will be administering SOL tests, and that is something that we understand is concerning to our parents, but we have tried to guide our teachers by creating modified instructional guides for each of our core subject areas. We have a parent version posted online for all of our parents who want some good late night reading. Go under the academics section, pull up your child's grade level and core subject area. You'll see within 9-week increments what we're covering topic-wise, and that the pacing is pretty loose. As I said, within 9 weeks, we don't want that pressure of this is what you must cover on this day, every week. But the topics and the order that they should be presented. And those are the key essential learnings that we know students need, not only for this year, for success on the SOL test, but for future years, that knowledge that rolls over and builds into their future content learning as well. So yes, we will have SOL tests, but hopefully a lot less pressure than we have felt before with those at the school level and on the individual student level. Students will also have an opportunity to, if they do not take the test, to take the test that they've missed this spring anytime between now and when they graduate. So that gives students flexibility. We are, as a school system, because of federal accountability, required for every student enrolled in biology and geometry at the high school level to have the students sit for those tests. Again, that's a federal accountability piece. But we also know that our families do have that opt-out or that delay in testing option as well.
So for the exam piece, stay tuned, more coming in the next couple of weeks. Okay, we'll leave that one at that one. 2 quick rapid-fire questions as we finish up. How should parents communicate their desired learning option for Cohort 4 students?
Well, hopefully by this point, our principals have, their surveys that they have created have made their way into every household. But understanding that some of those get lost in the shuffle along the way, at this point, we would ask you to reach out to your school directly and state that intent.
Okay. Next question. After they've communicated that desire, Ms. Newton and several others have asked for clarification, can they pull their child out of hybrid if they do not feel it is working for their child? Yes.
The short answer is yes. We're here to work with every student on a case-by-case basis, and if they feel that being fully virtual at home it is best for their child, then that's exactly what we want to support.
But if you're interested in CCPS Online, there is a deadline, Dr.
You
Pope.
read my mind.
Yep.
So yes, we want families to have the option, as Dr. Murray just mentioned, you can, at hopefully a semester increment, move from the hybrid back to the fully virtual, but the CCPS Online opportunity for registration ends this Friday at 5 p.m.
Okay. And I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but there have been several people who have inquired if we're walking the walk and putting our own children back in school. And so while I won't necessarily ask if you all want to join in, my 2 children will be going back to in-person. I know our school board members have indicated that theirs will be as well. Our school board, between the 5 members, have 15 school-age children, I think, and 2 graduates. So we are all in your shoes. We are all walking with you along this journey. Anybody have anything they want to add?
I want to give a shout out to Ms. Hugate and Ms. Weeder at Grange Hall, where both my kids attend in person, and empathizing with the public through some very stressful times. my daughter had to change second grade teachers to support virtual learning. So we're all in this together, and I'm glad that somebody gave us the opportunity to respond to that.
I would say I have a college-age student who's up at college, learning away, and then I additionally have a high school student who's at Monacan. He's looking forward to going back, and he's also here at the Tech Center, so he started last week and was really excited to be across the hall cooking away, and we were excited that he brought home dinner.
So, Dr. Pope, I want to put you in maybe an uncomfortable position. Smile. These are not, let's be clear, these are not the first groups of students who have already come back. In your travels over the last month, what have you seen that has worked so far with our students who have returned, albeit at the elementary level?
Right, so, well, and I've also seen our career and technical education students. So I've seen the tall students as well as the smaller students. And I would say with all of the age groups, something that has absolutely worked is students are respecting those social distance expectations. They're willing and happy to put on their masks. They're happy to be back, and they're very agreeable and cooperative, and that's regardless of age group. The other thing that I will say is amazing and wonderful every single day is when I walk into a first grade, first year teacher's classroom, and then I walk down another hallway and I walk into a fourth grade teacher's classroom who's a 30-year veteran, and the quality of instruction and the seamless, almost ambidextrous quality of our teachers who are managing virtual with one hand and students face-to-face with the other. You cannot tell the difference between the teachers, and I think that speaks to what we always say as educators. We want to be lifelong learners, and our teachers have stepped up and just are doing an incredible job, and I've seen that, of course, at the career and technical ed levels as well. So some real victories, and those are truly, they need to be owned by our parents, our students, and our teachers.
So we have about 3 minutes before our time comes to an end tonight, and I'm going to get back to the thanks in just a minute, and I'll tag you for the first round of thanks. But we do want to acknowledge again that this presentation will be available again through Facebook and YouTube. We will put it on our Project Restart landing page as well. We'll pull it down from social media and put it up there as well, mychesterfieldschools.com. We do want to thank you all for taking time to join us tonight. Hopefully the questions that we've been asked, albeit there's several hundred of them, and we've not gotten to all of them, but they've helped shine a light on what we've done to prepare for your students to return to school next Monday. We do want to make sure that we acknowledge again that this virus and this school division is a reflection of the community, and unfortunately when it's in the community, it's going to be in our schools. And as parents and as educators and as employees, we're going to do everything possible to protect your child just like they were one of ours. I would expect every teacher to do that with my children, and I would expect anybody to do that of us as well. And so we do realize the gargantuan role that we play as caretakers of your children when they're in our possession. That said, Dr. Pope, and you started on it just a second ago, I want to give special thanks to two different groups, and I'm going to ask you to give the first thanks and save the parents for last, because they've really been warriors during this as well. But our staff, whether it's our teachers, our bus drivers, our food service workers, our administrators, our support staff, they didn't ask for this either. And we've asked them to not only shift on a dime in mid-March, but we've asked them to do something outside of their comfort level with virtual learning to start the year. Now we're asking them to transition into an in-person. Our staff has done a fantastic job over the last 7 months.
Yes, so you think of rapid fire change, right? And you've talked about rapid fire questions here this evening. It's been relentless. It's been relentless on our teachers since mid-March. The adjustments, and so many of the adjustments we've made is to try to better serve our families. And I think our teachers understand the intention behind the modifications and the changes to the instructional delivery model. But what our families probably in our community don't know is that before our teachers left officially last year behind them in June and signed out for the summer, we already had slated them into so many professional learning experiences that they really jumped into this summer to learn all of the digital tools and applications that we have bought to learn how to really teach effectively through a learning management system. And even now, we have teachers who are still signing up for free opportunities that we're providing, which is just one more layer on a very difficult job that they're doing. And I could not be more pleased, and I could never have imagined in my career that I would have seen this type of change at this speed and to this level of grand effectiveness. So we just want to thank all of our teachers for all of their efforts, because it really is making a difference for our students.
And I'll open this next question up to anybody who wants to do it. It's not just our teachers who have been relentless in this pursuit of making sure that our children are served. We owe a huge gratitude and a huge thank you to our families as well. This isn't something that they signed up for. Some of them may not be trained, many of them may not be trained educators. Yet they've been warriors throughout this as well. Do you want to have the final remarks for our parents and give thanks to them, to our two level directors?
I think Dr. Merriman and I will both chime in just to appreciate everyone's grace toward the group that Dr. Pope just thanked, because we don't move these mountains in isolation, and it has been through our work together that we've been able to accomplish what we have in such short order during such tremendous and trying times. And so we appreciate all of the support and trust that you've provided this division and its instructional personnel.
I would certainly, of course, ditto everything that's being said here, because we really do work with both tremendous staff, tremendous administrators, and we work with tremendous families. And all the stuff that the staff is doing, all the work that the administration is doing, would be ineffective if families weren't willing to trust us with their students. So every day, we do thank you for that trust, because we recognize that that is key to this partnership, as we make sure that your students are going to be ready to graduate whenever that is, whether that be this year or in 12 years. Whenever they're ready to graduate, we really want to make sure that we're preparing them for the world. And so we thank you for putting that trust into us, and we look forward to honoring that and doing great work for the rest of the year for you, your students, and for our staff and community.
Thank you all. And with that, honest to goodness, we did receive a question about snow days. And so we're going to save a little lightheartedness for the end. The state has ruled that schools must be physically open in order to count for an instructional day. So I'm not sure if this is going to be well received by families or not, but there will continue to be snow days. Can't believe anybody after the last 7 months would want a snow day. But there will continue to be snow days moving forward. And so with that, we'll end on a little fun note. But we do sincerely thank you for joining us tonight. We hope that you found this information to be impactful to you, and also to help you make an informed decision as we return our secondary, middle, and high school students back to school next week. Again, we will have this presentation back on Facebook and on YouTube within minutes. It will be closed captioned for our Spanish-speaking population within the next several days, and that will be up as well. We appreciate our friends who have helped us with our hearing-impaired audience as well. Thank you for coming out tonight. But thank you for your continued support of everything that our staff does. We could not do this without you. We look forward to seeing your children back next Monday. Until then, have a great evening.